Hello, my name is Stephanie. This is chapter 17, and we're going to discuss the peak pose sequence that I created. So, the peak pose that I chose is wheel pose, and mostly because it's a pose pretty much everybody knows, even if you're not familiar with like gymnastics, yoga, any type of background like that. And it can be very accessible. And I know a lot of people are going to be like, what? Wheel pose? No. But there's so many different types of modifications you can do. And it doesn't need to be a full wheel pose with palms and feet on the floor. So that's why I picked it. Also, everybody has a little bit of back issues these days. I feel like we always have a little bit of back pain. So all of the postures leading up to wheel pose, I think, are very beneficial to not only like the wheel pose itself for the creation, um, but just in general on a day to day, because we hold a lot of tension in our back and our lower back and our hips, and that is something we focus a lot on when practicing wheel pose, especially opening up the chest and the shoulders and things like that. But a lot is to do with the middle and lower back as well. It's all important. Um, so, some of the neutralizing choices that I picked would be ragdoll. I thought that would be very beneficial after doing such an intense lower, middle, and upper back stretch, especially if you're going to make it into full wheel pose. So I picked that thinking that letting gravity take you and just hang there is going to feel really nice. Um, from ragdoll, we would go to mountain pose, but make it a slow roll. So rolling each vertebrae up, like rolling the spine upwards and coming up to center. Will feel very nice in the back, taking it slow with the breath, rolling the shoulders back once we get to full mountain pose, releasing and resting the arms at our sides, things like that. And then also side crescent, I thought would be very nice feeling. We already did a ragdoll, we worked our way up to mountain pose. So while we're here, we may as well kind of either attach the hands with our palms or we can interlace them together, and then doing a crescent pose standing in place but leaning to one side or the other. And just stretch out that side body, get a little bit more movement in there, because even working up to such a peak posture, we might still build a little bit of tension, so it might be nice to really release that. Um, And some things I picked for like the counter postures. So, full wheel, we're thinking we're going into a reverse way of where what our spine is naturally bending. Um, so doing a lot of like more forward folded things. I have a butterfly fold on here, or even like a spinal twist, just kind of warming it up or loosening it. Cat cow, going both ways, up with the spine, down with the spine. Camel pose, helping open the heart, the shoulders, the chest, while also strengthening the legs and focusing on the hips while we push out in camel pose. Wild Thing, which is like a nice modified version of wheel pose. And you can modify Wild Thing from, using blocks for toes to touch. Maybe your foot doesn't touch a block on the floor. It dangles there. It just opens up the hip into a square with square out the hip. With your leg up. There's lots of variations. You can also have a nice Wild Thing and then transition into a wheel pose. Um, and just back to back. Also, down dog, very good for the shoulders, loosening the tension in the lower back and the hips by pedaling the feet and getting some activation in the legs and the hamstrings as well. And lastly, I'd like to add thread the needle. I thought that would be very important for the twisting of the upper body. Although we're doing a lot of extension and reaching behind us, um, I thought having that extra stretch of going side to side would help kind of loosen these muscles and some of the little fibers that got going on here. So, yeah, so that was my little breakdown for chapter 17, peak pose creation for wheel.